Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I will be making my April bullet journal spreads. The theme that I chose for this month to match my overall theme of the ocean is rays. I think they're nice creatures, plus they'll complement my May theme, which I am excited for. I always start my monthly theme with a quote page, and to be honest, I couldn't find any proper quotes about rays. I don't know how, but I ended up making the connection of a ray fish and the same word is used for a ray of sunlight, so I included the ray of happiness saying. For the thin letters, I used a handwriting pen that you normally get for kids, like early writers, but it acts as a thick fine tip pen, so I do like it. I prefer when my outline for letters is a bit thicker. Now I do apologize for my really horrific calligraphy. I seriously need to practice more. I am just a beginner, but I guess I was too confident and kinda winged it here without thinking about it too much. I did use reference, but I don't know. When I tried using the brush pen before using reference, it turned out way better. I don't know. I struggle making clear up and down strokes. The pen that I used is the Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen, but I'm not sure whether I use the soft or hard tip anymore. The bubbles I outlined using a simple fine liner and colored them in using cheap coloring pencils. So using a yellow coloring pencil, I gave like a glow or highlight to the calligraphy words to kind of represent the sun ray and fill in the space. The materials that I just mentioned I used basically all throughout the process of making the spreads, so it's always the handwriting pen for letters. Unless they're quite small, then I prefer to use the fine liner. The fine liner to outline everything else, like doodles and boxes, and coloring pencils to color things in. To be honest, I'm also not the best at shading. I struggle a bit with that, but I think the rays turned out pretty fine. I decided to do the themes in like a chibi style, which is like a cutesy style. I'd use reference, but make it my own in certain ways. Like a lot of the drawings would have different eyes, and although I'd like to mix and match, I decided to just stick with one style of eyes to have all the themes for the year flow nicely together. Also, in case you also got confused, because my sister was the one who thought so, and maybe you also thought, what am I doing? The ray on the top is drawn from the view as if you're looking from the top, so that you're looking at its back with the spots on it, and the ray on the bottom is kind of standing up, so to say. The 6 lines are its gills. You can basically see its belly. It's just because my sister thought that it's the back that you're looking at and not the belly, and was wondering why in the world I put the mouth above its eyes. Yeah, just to clarify that. I also drew a little blush, which I think is nice to make the creatures a little more cartoony and cute. And to match this monthly cover page to the quote page, I made the shining effect with the coloring pencil here again over the April font. I tend to write the dot on my eyes with a circle, and looking back at it, I should have made it into a bubble. That would be fun. Yeah, that's how the cover page turned out. Next we have a calendar page that I drew beforehand. Before, I used to draw the whole calendar out using pencil, but to be honest, I just find that too much work. Like, I'm gonna go over it with a pen later anyway. But I do want to section it out in order to know where I can draw around the calendar, and also to have the lines there for me as a guide when I actually outline the calendar. Everything's all done, and all I do is using a ruler go along from one point to the other with my fine liner. I prefer to have it just pre-counted how big the boxes should be using the dot grid, and not needing to worry about accidentally drawing a line where I shouldn't, using a pen that doesn't rub out. But also counting boxes as I draw isn't my favorite thing to do either, since instead of making a straight line, I go slower, and therefore press on the paper in one place for too long and create ink blobs, which isn't really pretty. For writing the days of the week, I must have used the hard tip Tombow brush pen because it is made for tiny hand lettering like that. I wrote out the numbers with a fine liner, and it turned out quite thick. I think it's because the pen is running out and the tip is getting flatter or something, but I'm not sure. The calendar though is 7 by 5, and I drew it exactly like the ones in my previous spread, but I realized when I drew the draft that the 30th won't fit on it, since I start my weeks with a Sunday, since as you can see I ended up writing Sabbath instead of Saturdays, which is the last day of the week. Honestly, I started doing that since Saturday wouldn't fit, and so I stuck with that this year. But anyway, it's just one day, which is why I added it in the first week, as I've seen some calendars do it, which is not a problem for me. Around the calendar, I drew little rays that resemble a manta ray. I saw drawings of them and just the little things that stick out at the head, which looks a bit like rabbit ears, and I found out that they're called cephalic fins. Looked quite cute, and I wanted to include them in the spreads. My next spread is a line a day. The line a day page is basically like a little daily journal kind of thing. You just write whatever on the line next to the date, like a diary entry, but yeah, on a single line. I think before I wanted to have a highlight of the day page where you write your favorite part of the day, but I felt like it would be too similar to my next page, which is a gratitude log, and ended up choosing the a line a day spread instead. It can be quite fun to read back on it, and it doesn't take too long to look through a whole year. This time I stuck with something really simple. I got a ruler and felt tip markers and drew lines all along from the dates 1 to 30. Sometimes what I do is alternate between colors, and depending on the theme, I'd use 2 to 4 colors. One time I even used 6 colors for my rainbow theme. One time I had no colors due to the theme, and laziness too, to be honest. But yeah, I like the simplicity of this one. Also because I didn't draw much around it, which makes it look less squished and busy. It's just that around these logs, there's usually not much space left. I started using the felt tip markers only this year. Last year I used highlighters a lot, but they stood out so much with the neon colors and wouldn't always complement the rest of the spreads, which is why I switched to using brush pen markers as the highlighters. To be honest, I don't even know why I started using the felt tips, maybe just because I felt it, I don't know. We also have a wavy line underneath the title and a doodle of a manta ray, and on the opposite top corner of the next page we have a normal ray back again. I make the gratitude log basically the same as the previous page most of the time. They're side by side and are meant to look nice together. I just like having them look like one single spread or a spread with 2 parts. Basically, it was made the same way as I just described. We're flipping over to our mood tracker. The mood tracker is a spread for tracking your mood, obviously. Usually I draw something, for example, for my other theme it was a turtle, and sectioned out the shell, and each day you'd color in a part of the shell depending on what mood you're in. But this time I didn't know what to do, which is why I simply drew 2 circles using a compass and sectioned it out with a protractor instead of changing a doodle into a tracker. When I outlined it, it turned out quite wonky though, the circle I mean, which is kind of disappointing. Instead of making the animal itself a tracker, I drew a ray in the middle of the tracker, but I ended up drawing it a little too high, which is why I added sand at the bottom. I thought that the sand might ruin it since I didn't plan to use any yellow at first and it would have been the only page using that color. I thought it would ruin the aesthetic, but it turned out it was good since I used yellow on the cover page anyway. What I did really badly is the calligraphy writing at the top. Some letters are larger, some smaller, some are at an angle, some are straight. I better start practicing a lot. The moods I always have though are happy, sad, angry, tired, okay, and annoyed. I know that tired isn't a proper emotion, but some days I feel indifferent and just predominantly tired, which is why I included it in. Some days, well, most days, to be honest, I feel more than one emotion, which is why I pick out the emotion that was the strongest that day, or the feeling that I had for most of the day. It really depends on what I think in the moment is worth documenting. For the color code, I chose different shades of yellow and blue, and to know what section on the circle to start with, I drew a little line on the top of the section because I didn't think it would look as nice with numbers in every box. Here we have the habit tracker, which is a place to keep track of each of your habits. If you complete your habit, you color in the box on the day you did it. This year my habit trackers aren't a simple column of boxes to color in, but I made it into a box instead, which is in the shape of the calendar. The top right box is the 1st and the bottom left box is the 30th of April. It's just simpler and way easier to navigate, plus it's in a more condensed space rather than a long column going all along the page, which gives me more freedom with the doodles. Speaking of doodles, beside each box there is a little ray, and I tried to make them all look somewhat different. Of course we have the manta ray I drew earlier and the little ray, but the one on the very bottom I tried to do in kind of like a triangular shape, but still with round edges. I feel like I could have drawn them somewhat bigger, but it's too late now, I guess. Here again I drew the bubbles around and colored them in a light blue. To be honest, I struggle a bit with the bubbles. It's just that I find it a bit hard to space them out nicely so that it doesn't look neither too empty nor too cluttered. I have to play around with the sizes and with how to group them together, and at times I'm just not too happy with how the spacing ends up looking. It turned out nicely on the calendar and mood tracker, but I'm still not quite sure about how it looks on this page. My 3 habits are journaling, Bible, and writing. Habit number 1 is journaling, since I daily journal in my notebook. Habit number 2 is reading my Bible, since it's important and I try to do it when I wake up and before I go to bed. And habit number 3 is writing, which I technically do every day since I try to journal every day anyway, but I do hope to start writing more in other places than my daily journal. My last page or end page takes up 2 pages. It is my scripture page. God is an important part of my life, so from the beginning of my bullet journal, I chose to add a scripture at the end of each month instead of just having a quote. The scripture that I chose was Psalm 146:3. Put not your trust in princes, in a son of man in whom there is no salvation. Doesn't mean that you can't trust anyone, but more that we shouldn't set our heart in trusting men since salvation only comes from God. I don't know why I chose it, it was probably just a random choice. I feel like this time my hand lettering looks somewhat better, but still not as good as I hoped it would be. The word trust looks better than salvation. The letters are more or less in the same shape and not of various sizes and not on the same angle. I think I could have made it a bit thicker though. There's a lot of empty space here too, and I think the yellow glow around the words here worked well as well. I'm not exactly happy with the spacing of the bubbles here too. I don't know. It just seems off. Maybe there's too much space under the word salvation? I don't really know. I can't put my finger on it. It doesn't look too bad though. We have a giant cute ray here with a blush again. Maybe it could have been a bit more symmetrical, but I think it's fine. What I probably could have done is put more emphasis on the fact that rays can sting. Like I could have drawn a visible stinger on their tails or something, but I'm still pleased with how they look. Here we've got the final flip through of this month. I hope that this inspired you in some way to do something similar in your own bullet journal. On my channel I have more videos about bullet journaling and just journaling content in general, so make sure to check it out. Comment down below which spread was your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye bye.